Things are so weird right now. It sort of feels like the end of a fireworks show. We affectionately call it the grand finale, but we all know that it's really just the fireworks guy going buck wild because he's already got his check and this last 30 seconds is for the love of the game. That's sort of what the end of Trump's first term is starting to feel like, and there's no real consistent narrative through which we can talk about what's going on around us. So instead, I'm going to take a step back and look at Trump's first term in its totality. It's just under a month until the election, which means I have 4 more videos before the last votes are cast. I'm going to take each of those videos to go over 1 year in Trump's first term, and I'll promise you that you're going to be surprised by some of the stuff you've forgotten. As I started researching the first year of Trump's presidency, it quickly became clear that I was going to need some guardrails in deciding what I was going to talk about. Otherwise, each of these videos would be well over an hour long. So I'm going to prioritize and focus on the things that Trump's actually done instead of the things that he's said. Looking back, it is remarkable how much news this guy makes simply by saying things. But it's actually pretty rare that the things that he says correlates to things that he will actually do. So we're going to focus on the things that Trump has done and the things that have actually happened during his first term, try to build a cogent and sober idea of the actual output of this administration. The first dominant theme of Trump's inaugural year was executive orders. Whether it was a new executive order to make good on a campaign promise or an executive order to rescind an old executive order, it was very clear that Trump loves executive orders, and this should be a surprise to no one. There's no idea more appealing to Trump than to be able to just declare something and have it be so. It takes very little work, he gets instant gratification, and he gets to sign a piece of paper at the big desk and show it to all the cameras. He loves them. And his first executive order as president was a doozy. On January 27th, just a week after he was sworn in, Trump signed an executive order banning travel from 7 Middle Eastern and African countries. The supporters of the president like to refer to this as the travel ban, while critics are more likely to refer to it as the Muslim ban, and there's a good reason for this.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on.
Given that all 7 countries in the original ban were Muslim-majority countries, it really seemed like Trump was using this executive order to make good on a campaign promise. The executive order was promptly blocked by the courts, and it took 3 tries for the administration to get a ban that the courts were willing to agree was legal. This third and final travel ban exists to this day, and it's now expanded to include 13 countries, all of which are Muslim-majority countries except for North Korea and Venezuela. There is a waiver process that people can use to try to gain access to the US, but to this day, only 2% of waiver applicants have been granted. Now, there's no evidence that these bans have actually made America safer. Meanwhile, hundreds of people were detained in airports, and tens of thousands of people suddenly had their visas revoked. People have been separated from their homes and their families, seemingly for the primary goal of making good on a promise to a xenophobic base of Trump supporters. If you're a resident of one of these countries hoping to pursue freedom and liberty, you're going to have to look elsewhere in the free world because, unfortunately, America is closed to you. Then there was the flurry of executive orders that had the main purpose of undoing work by the Obama administration. This included withdrawing from the Paris Agreement, withdrawing from TPP, and ending DACA. The withdrawal from the Paris Agreement drew criticisms from across the political spectrum, mainly because the main justification from withdrawing was that Trump wanted to renegotiate the deal so that it was fairer to the US. However, most of the things that he claimed to want to negotiate were predicated on lies or misinformation about what was actually in the deal to begin with. And since the withdrawal, there's really been no effort to make any progress on those supposed negotiations. In response, governors from 24 states and Puerto Rico formed the United States Climate Alliance and agreed to remain committed to the promises we made in the original Paris Agreement. Still, Trump withdrawing meant that $3 billion that was supposed to go to climate research was lost, and we further ceded leadership on climate on the global stage to China and the European Union. On the third day of his presidency, Trump announced an executive order that would pull the United States out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. The other 11 countries decided to move forward with the partnership without us, which essentially meant that American companies would be subject to a lot of tariffs when trading with many of these countries that other countries in the partnership would avoid. Trump said that he would rather pursue individual bilateral agreements with each country in the partnership, but he's only made significant progress on that with less than half of the countries in agreement. In the meantime, American companies are at a competitive disadvantage with their counterparts in Canada, Mexico, and Australia when trading with countries in East Asia. Then in 2018, Trump expressed interest in rejoining the TPP, but he hasn't made any progress on that front. Finally, there's DACA. Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals was an immigration executive order signed by Barack Obama, and it essentially made it so undocumented residents who were brought to America as children could remain in the country without fear of being deported. Trump has made it very clear that he prefers fewer immigrants in America, and in September of 2017, the White House declared that DACA was illegal and repealed it. The NAACP sued the government to prevent that repeal. Eventually, it made its way through to the Supreme Court, where it was struck down and DACA survived. But in those 3 years that it took to work its way through the court system, hundreds and thousands of our neighbors were unsure whether or not they were going to be able to stay in the only country that they've ever known to be home. Moving on from the executive orders, there was the run-up to the special counsel investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election. You already know the gist of this investigation, and I might make a standalone video or series of videos in the future to kind of go over what happened here, especially since we're learning so many new things about this investigation right now. For now, I'm just going to give you the gist of what happened in 2017 pertaining to this investigation. In February of 2017, Donald Trump fired then National Security Advisor Michael Flynn on the advice of White House counsel Don McGahn after it became known that Michael Flynn had lied to the FBI and the White House about conversations that he had with Russian officials during the transition. After requesting a loyalty oath from FBI Director Jim Comey in January, in mid-February, Donald Trump also asked Jim Comey to drop the investigation into Michael Flynn. FBI investigations into the White House grew after Congress became concerned that then Attorney General Jeff Sessions might have perjured himself in statements to the Senate. And eventually Trump fired Comey. Then during a meeting with Russian foreign ministers in the White House, Trump tells them that he's not concerned about Russian interference in the 2016 election, and that he fired Comey to end the FBI investigations into it. Eventually in May, the DOJ appoints a special counsel led by Robert Mueller to take over those investigations from the FBI. Again, this is going to take its own video. We'll get into this later. Moving on from that fiasco, we get to one of the only real legislative achievements of this administration: the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. The law reduced the tax rates for businesses and individuals, increased the standard deduction and some family tax credits, reduced state and local income tax deductions, reduced mortgage interest deductions, reduced the alternative minimum tax for individuals and eliminated it for corporations, reduced the estate tax, and canceled the individual health insurance mandate from the Affordable Care Act. The CBO estimates that this law will increase the national debt by $2.3 trillion over the next 10 years. The tax cuts for individuals go away over time and will actually start paying more in taxes by 2027, although the tax cuts for corporations are permanent unless the law changes. In the first year after the bill passed, corporate tax revenues dropped by 31%, and the economy didn't see any increased growth at all. 60% of the income saved went to the top 20% of income earners, and only 14% of Americans report that they noticed any depreciable drop in their taxes. So basically, we just blew a massive hole in the deficit for no real economic benefit. And the people that experienced higher incomes were corporations and people that were already making a lot of money. Finally, we have what is undoubtedly the most successful aspect of Trump's first term, at least from a conservative's perspective: judges. In his first year, Trump was able to fill the Supreme Court justice seat that Mitch McConnell had stole from Barack Obama with Neil Gorsuch. He was also able to appoint a record 12 judges to the Federal Appeals Court, also in part because Mitch McConnell had made it so hard for Barack Obama to fill those seats. Realistically speaking, Trump's judicial legacy is Mitch McConnell's achievement. Looking back, we're going to regret that Democrats and Barack Obama weren't way more aggressive when it came to judges. And if Biden wins the White House and if Democrats win the Senate in 2020, they're really going to have to learn from these mistakes. We can't wrap up 2017 without addressing Hurricane Maria. Maria killed 3,000 Americans in Puerto Rico, and the federal response to the disaster was horribly inadequate. Local Puerto Rican officials had to basically get on TV and beg the president to send aid. And when he did send aid, it was reluctant and sparse. The president downplayed the seriousness of the disaster at every turn and really just ended up being another display of his shallow callousness, particularly in the face of Americans that he doesn't truly believe are real Americans. I'm going to conclude this on a lighter note by pointing to my personal favorite moment of Trump's first year as president, the Great American Eclipse. On August 21st, 2017, for the first time in over 100 years, a total solar eclipse was visible across the entire contiguous United States. It was a really big deal. It was a true media event. Everybody was running around trying to get their eclipse glasses. They were running out in all the stores. It was really hard to get a hold of them, but they were really important because, as experts warned us, it was really dangerous to just look up at the eclipse with your naked eyes. It could ruin them forever, cause really long-lasting damage. And then this happened. Just look at it. That is my favorite image of the Trump presidency. Does anything better capture the attitude and mentality of this administration than that photo? I don't think so. So that's it. That's all of year one, 2017. I think these are the most important things that the Trump administration actually did. Next week, we're going to move along to 2018. And spoiler alert, it doesn't get better. Thanks for watching this week. I think this is going to be a fun series. Let me know what you think of it in the comments below. Also, let me know what you think I left out. Obviously, Charlottesville is going to come up, I assume. But again, I was really focusing on what this administration did, not what Trump said. And Charlottesville was a lot about what Trump said. Go ahead and like the video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see you next Sunday.